How to lead like Mandela in the world which is in chaos. What comes to mind when you hear the name Nelson Mandela? The name Nelson Mandela evokes various feelings. For some people, especially the oppressed and downtrodden, Mandela was a political hero who fought for peace and justice. Some see him as a saint, others see the angel within us that can brighten their days. Few people in history have had an opportunity to influence the world and global politics like Nelson Mandela did. A few of us were privileged to observe him close and personal, working side by side, receiving his counsel and also advice. Throughout his life, the global community also benefited from the timeless wisdom of Nelson Mandela. There were many moments in Mandela's life when he was tested. The ones people knew about were large and public and dramatic events. But courage, he will say, is an everyday activity, and we can display it in ways large and small. Number one, Mandela the educator. Mandela cherished the importance and power of education. During his era, he was one of the most educated person, a reader of note, and the mind of sponge, devouring wisdom and knowledge from the elders. Nelson Mandela matriculated at Hamilton Town Methodist boarding school in 1938, and as such formed part of a small number of black pupils who had attained a high school education in South Africa. Mandela saw education as the most powerful weapon any person can use to change the world for the better. Mandela was the first member of his family to attend his school and high school, and he also developed a love for boxing and long distance running to keep himself fit, robust, and mentally strong. During his decades of incarceration, he taught comrades the value of education. By the time he was released from prison, he had acquired a law degree which helped him, especially during the negotiation period. Mandela the rebel. Mandela's rebellion was inspired by a sense of justice. It did not start when he was in politics. There comes a time in your life when you can no longer put off choosing. You have to choose one path or another. You can live safe and be protected by people just like you, or stand up and be a leader for what is right. Remember this, people never remember the crowd. They remember the one person who dared to say and do what no one will do. So very few want to be rebels anymore because they are afraid. You can best serve civilization by being against what usually passes for it. Yesterday we obeyed kings and bent our necks before emperors, but today we kneel only to the truth, follow only beauty, and obey only love. Non-conformity is a part of the revolution, but it is neither the cause nor its purpose. Mandela, the thinking leader. Number three, Mandela's model for leading from behind was not his father, but Jongi Ntaba, the king who raised him in the great place. After Mandela's father died, his mother packed up a small satchel of Nelson's belongings and walked through the hills of the Transkei to Mqekezweni, the capital of Thembuland, known as the Great Place. Mandela's father had been a counselor to the king, and the king wanted to groom Mandela to eventually become a counselor to his own son, Justice, who was Mandela's contemporary. Mandela recalls the long, quiet journey from Nkunu, his home village, walking on foot with his mother. He was sad about leaving the only world he had ever known, but he was dazzled by its grandeur when he got to the great place. A thought leader has been described as an individual authority in a specific field. What is the value of thought leadership? Expertise, insight, and valuable perspective are elements that lead to thought leadership status. To be an influential thought leader is to possess a depth of knowledge no one else has. A thought leader or influencer offers unique guidance, inspires innovation, and influences others based on their expertise and perspective in the industry. Thought leaders have informed opinion leaders and the go-to people in their field of expertise. Thought leaders become the trusted sources who move and inspire people with innovative ideas, turn ideas into reality, and know and show how to replicate their success. Emotions may be authentic, and authenticity is a modern virtue, but one can be authentic without unnecessarily revealing. That is where Mandela's extraordinary discipline came in. And that is why the smile was his mask, disguising any hurt or sadness, hiding as much as it disclosed. Ultimately, his smile was symbolic of how Mandela molded himself. At every stage of his life, he decided who he wanted to be and created the appearance and then the reality of that person. So he became who he wanted to be. Number 4, Mandela the Lawyer. After studying law at UNISA, through correspondence, Mandela used his expertise as a lawyer and to use the law as a litmus test for fairness and equality. Before his incarceration, Mandela already had become a lawyer. In December of 1952, Oliver Tambo joined Nelson Mandela as partner in his legal practice, the first African-run legal partnership in the country. During the next 2 years, Mandela and Tambo worked together in their legal practice, defending hundreds of people affected by apartheid laws. Their approach became very successful. A great lawyer is not only learned in the law, so that when the brief is laid before him or her, but they may also place this fact with him. Lawyers can match into a land of untamed information and make it adhere to their own ideas of order, creating a successful system where only chaos has hitherto reigned. In the mind of a great lawyer, there exists a private tribunal of sense and feeling. A lawyer puts good with good, wrong with evil, and resigns the false to the false. The lawyer strikes at vulnerable points in the evidence of others. A lawyer finds the affinity that exists between actual events, connecting every day with the unexpected, and by weaving lines of testimony within and around the statement of strangers through the most perplexing phases of fabrication, can bring the truth to light if it suits his client's case, or throw it into shadow if it doesn't. Mandela understood that what is counted in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. He knew and understood that there were no passion for being found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. Everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success if dedicated to and passionate about what they do. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. Mandela the President. Mandela's political activities soon became a thorn on the side of the powers that be in South Africa. Unsurprisingly, he was later arrested for his political views and political activism at the time. On 12 June 1964, all the treason accused were sentenced to life imprisonment and held at Pretoria Central. That same night, Mandela and his co-accused were flown by a military plane to Robben Island outside Cape Town in the Western Cape. Upon arrival at the Robben Island airstrip, Mandela and the others were handcuffed, loaded into a vehicle and taken into an old building known as B section, which was still under construction, where Mandela would be imprisoned. Mandela was issued with prison clothes, short pants, no socks and sandals, no shoes. The issuing of short pants and sandals was significant. Becoming a prisoner during the apartheid period was the highest price many paid when they opposed injustice. Mandela paid the highest price by spending over 27 years in prison. It was calculated by the prison authorities to undercut their rights as men to wear long pants and shoes. This demonstrates that the apartheid logic of racial subjugation and segregation extended to the prison system, as African prisoners received different food, rations, and clothes than their Indian and colored inmates. Mandela and his comrades were held in the old jail until 25th of June. Mandela and 19 other leading Congress Alliance activists were arrested and charged under Suppression of Communism Act during the same month. Like all the others, Mandela was sentenced to 9 months imprisonment with hard labor, suspended for 3 years. He was also served with banning order that prohibited him from attending gatherings for 6 months and leaving the Johannesburg magisterial district. For the following 9 years, his banning orders were repeatedly renewed, limiting Mandela's sphere of influence in Johannesburg. In prison, courage was demonstrated one day at a time. It was not just on the occasions when one had to publicly stand up to a guard. It was simply in walking tall, maintaining your daily dignity, your sense of optimism and hope. One day in 1969, a warder came to Mandela's cell with devastating news. Mandela's oldest son, Thembi, had been killed in a car crash. One of the few times during all those years that Mandela did not leave his cell during the day. Walter Sisulu, his oldest friend, was the only one who visited him, and they sat in silence, holding hands. Mandela, the negotiator. Learning to negotiate was one of the earliest lessons when Mandela was still young. During his professional career, Mandela understood that negotiation is a powerful tool to win your opponents, especially when you are on the side of justice. Mandela was a skillful negotiator. Mandela's law degree and understanding of politics set him apart from the rest of the ANC and the PAC political activists at the time. A good negotiator sometimes wins more out of a deal than he or she expected. Mandela knew that negotiation means willingly entering into a professional conflict. Instead, focus on the interests and goals every day. Trade things you care about less for things that matter to you more, and think of yourself and the other negotiator as partners in problem solving. During the negotiation, information is more valuable than eloquence. A good negotiator sometimes wins more out of a deal than he expected. Any negotiation obviously has limits. Otherwise, war is irrelevant. Should you simply walk away? No hard feelings? Whatever your decision, it will be a good one because you have retained control of the negotiation. To be a successful negotiator, you must understand the balance of power. There are times to push forward and the time to reflect and assess the state and level of understanding of the dynamics. When you are attacked in a negotiation, pause and avoid angry emotional reactions. Instead, ask your counterpart a calibrated question. Effective negotiation requires a persistent focus on what is important, what is the most important thing. A good negotiator sometimes wins more out of a deal than he or she expected. Negotiation means willfully entering into a professional conflict. Every object looks different from different angles. Therefore, your eye level is not the only reality. In negotiation, there is no penalty for saying a number that is too big. The trick to negotiation was to hold all the cards going in, and even if you didn't, to try to look as though you did. So don't burn your bridges until you build better ones. In a negotiation, we must find a solution that pleases everyone because no one accepts that they must lose and that the other must win. Both must win. In life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. The trick to negotiation was to hold all the cards going in, and even if you didn't, try to look as though you did. Willingness to meet halfway works well only if we can judge distance accurately. During the negotiation period in South Africa for democracy in South Africa, Mandela surrounded himself with some of the best brains. He and the negotiators negotiated what is seen as the best constitution globally. Mandela believed that resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, he would say, but to live in a way that represents and enhances the freedom of others as well. Number 7, Mandela, the difference maker. The name Mandela will forever associate with a global icon who made a difference in the world, fighting for justice in South Africa and escalating the movement for justice worldwide. Few political icons command respect and vilification from some quarters than Mandela. The West, especially America and the UK at the time, were a case in point. Within this context, the Eastern European countries, especially Russia and China, supported the struggle for liberation in Southern Africa. But, of course, each of those countries were positioning themselves for their own interest. Mandela could cut through the noise and pursue the route which could bring political settlement in the country. Mandela crafted his legacy within the context of contradictory political and personal life. In the process, he won some victories and also lost others. His philosophy was to live life as though nobody was watching and express himself as though everyone was listening. Mandela believed deeply that education was the most powerful weapon for any person on the planet to change the world. What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived, it is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. Although many saw Mandela as a saint, Mandela was the first to confess that he was not a saint, unless you think a saint is a sinner who keeps on sinning or trying. Mandela believed in playing big and not small. Mandela embraced the challenge of the time and fulfilled his mission with distinction. Mandela understood that what we make out of what we have is not what we are given. Separates one person from another. To be a successful leader, learn how to negotiate. Negotiation is one of the most essential skills for leadership. Decades before the end of apartheid, Mandela also served as an inspiration for civil rights movement worldwide, including the US in particular. Number 8, Mandela the Reconciliator. Mandela hated race discrimination most intensely, and in all its manifestations, he fought it tooth and nail. He fought discrimination all during his life. Mandela fought until the end of his days. Mandela's calling was to embrace the challenge of his time. Mandela knew that sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great, and believed his generation was ready up to the task to fight. The concept of reconciliation was not always Mandela's, which he espoused. Mandela saw reconciliation as necessary, especially when injustice was corrected. Mandela played a vital role during the negotiation process. Truth be told, he was not alone. The ANC, led by Oliver Tambo, believed in democratic centralism, and they knew and wanted to ensure that there is a central command which played a very important role in the process. So understand that in times of change, reconciliation can play a role, and within the context of South Africa, that is what actually happened. There can be no reconciliation, a reorganization of power. Some argued, of course, Mandela navigated the storms of the time at that time. It is precisely because of his understanding, and Mandela understood reconciliation as a powerful and transformative power of healing. He became acutely aware of the profound healing which was needed at the time. We have learned from Mandela and other leaders that before you do the work of reconciliation with another, you need to restore communication with yourself and other key stakeholders. To reconcile ourselves with one another, we must release our judgment and make peace that we are part of humanity. Moments of kindness and reconciliation are worth having, even if the parting has to come sooner or later. You cannot ask people to coexist by having one side bow their heads and rely on the solution that is only good for one side. We can stop blaming each other and engage in a dialogue with one another, one time at a time. The prerequisite to life is not power. The prerequisite to cohabitation, reconciliation, and the common political future is to give up the monopoly of power. Remember, confrontation is about reconciliation and awareness, not judgment or anger. Of all Mandela's leadership virtue, he is still known as reconciliatory. Mandela's leadership was based on fundamental principles of justice and fairness. Although for decades as a young leader, he was seen as spitting fire in his role as a youth league leader. Years later, as we said, in the 1980s and 1990s, he also embraced calmness and decisive leadership amid turbulent situations. Mandela was calm and disarmed his enemies through his calmness. In fact, during Mandela's presidency, he radiated calmness. He knew that leaders who lose personal control lose in any situation. Ahmed Kathrada was in prison with Mandela for nearly 3 decades, and Kathrada said he only saw Mandela angry twice in 2 occasions, and both involved the warders who were insulting Winnie Mandela at that time. Mandela is not just an icon, he's an incredible human being who has ever lived. Number 9, Mandela the President. Even before Mandela was released from prison, many in South Africa and around the world admired him as the President of South Africa in waiting. During his presidency, Mandela also worked to protect South Africa's economy from collapse after liberation. There was also a severe need to address the economic legacy of apartheid, poverty, inequalities, unequal access to social services and infrastructure, and an economy that had been in crisis for nearly 2 decades. In 1994, the Reconstruction and Development Program was introduced. The RDP was South Africa's socio-economic policy framework implemented by the ANC government of Mandela. The ANC's main aim in developing the RDP was to address the immense socio-economic problems of apartheid. Expressively, it sets its sights on alleviating poverty and addressing massive shortfalls in social services across South Africa. Though its RDP, it was funded by government with the support and assistance to some degree by the private sector. And also it was part of Mandela to spread reconciliation and to ensure that South Africa at that time reflected and began to build a nation. And as a symbol of that, in 1995, the World Rugby was held in South Africa. And rugby, as we may know, was associated with apartheid. And at that time, he wore a rugby shirt, which symbolized the power of reconciliation. As we said, it was also the first time that the World Cup, in which South Africa was allowed to participate. And another significant moment is 1996, when he signed the new constitution, which established fairness for all and guaranteed rights for all. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa was approved by the Constitutional Court on the 4th of December 1996 and took effect on the 4th of February 1997. So, since 1997, we live in a constitutional state. The Constitution was founded on the following values: human dignity, achievement of equality, and the enhancement of human rights and freedom, non-racialism and non-sexism, the supremacy of the Constitution, and the rule of law. Number 10, Mandela the Legacy. When Mandela retired from active politics. In 1999, Mandela was called to help broker peace agreements in Burundi and Central Africa, serving as a mediator in South Africa. Mandela pursued money-raising drives for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. If he would do this by, among other things, inviting business leaders to join him on visits to settlements of poor people, where he will have them pledge donations, particularly for schools and classrooms. Such facilities have become known as the products of Madiba magic. Mandela's status as a liberator who spent years in prison for justice inspired many to support people's liberation in South Africa and around the world. Nelson Mandela promoted scientific and environmental education. Mandela so valued the power of science and research that he lent his name to 3 institutions of technology in Nigeria, in Tanzania, Burkina Faso, and also in South Africa. Another institute in South Africa also bears his name. It is remarkable development in a country where black people were not allowed to attend classes a generation or 2 ago. During apartheid, black South Africans were prevented from studying science and technology and barred from careers in science and technology and also engineering and mathematics. But that changed when Mandela was elected president. And throughout his life, Mandela lived by those words as a steadfast champion for children's rights. Today, the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund carries on his legacy by pledging to give voice and dignity to the African child by building a rights-based movement. Mandela also donated a third of his salary to create the organization during his tenure as president. He was charged with ending extreme poverty and its symptoms, such as hunger, exploitation, and also homelessness. In 2009, Mandela received the World's Children's Prize Decade Child Rights Hero Award to recognize his commitment to the children of South Africa and the world. In 1993, Mandela donated part of his prize money to support street children and other kids in need when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's right. The world has not only lionized Mandela, it has also sentimentalized him during and turning him into a black Santa Claus. The beaming old man who made an unimaginable sacrifice. Nelson Mandela passed away on the 9th of 5th December 2013. After spending 27 years in prison, the civil rights activist led a movement that led to abolishing his country's notorious apartheid regime, which mandated segregation since 1948. After many years of struggle, he was released in 1991 and became the country's first black president. And in 1994, after a democratic election, ended apartheid. We know that Mandela was the leading figure in the fight against South Africa's racist apartheid system. But his activism didn't stop at him here in his home country. After retiring as a president, Mandela worked to educate people about Africa's AIDS crisis. Mandela also helped broker peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as we said, where there was political conflict and wars. When the World Cup came to South Africa in 2010, Mandela attended the closing ceremony as a guest of honor, and his appearance, despite his poor health, made one of the world's most significant events even more special. The hero who emerged from a tiny prison cell to help topple apartheid. Yes, we agree he was not alone. but his leadership delivered human and political rights to millions of oppressed people in South Africa. That's right. The status of South Africa is a country that used reconciliation, a philosophy which was spearheaded by Nelson Mandela, to build the country, has played a very important role in ensuring peace and harmony in the country. Here are a few key questions which I would like to leave you with. How can we use education to elevate the status of those without skills and hope in the world? What are some of the leadership lessons can you learn and implement today? How are you bringing reconciliation in the world, which still has so many conflict, injustices, and war? What legacy do you want to leave behind to make the world a better place? Mandela's legacy will live for centuries to come. What about you? Let me pause here. Dr. Masasekane Misha Kosa, the thinking futurist. Thank you.